This is Turn 1 Thoughtseize. I'm Ahren.
And I'm Zach.
And this is episode 92. So you top 16 your first Pro Tour. What now?
Come on, man. Bring it.
What have you done for me lately?
Well, I think lately kind of did a lot.
It's still, yeah, I guess it still counts as lately. Since it was
I hope so.
Last week, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago at this point.
2 weeks ago. Yep.
Like 8 days.
My concept of time is still clouded by like an excessive amount of cold medicine because I am still sick.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Oh, man, it just like it won't. And I went to the doctor, which is something like I'm not one of those people who's like I never go to the doctor. Like if I'm really sick, I go to the doctor. But if it's just a cold, like I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna give them $50, and they're gonna be like, wait it out.
Yep.
And that is what they did. And then I was like, okay, well, I've already been sick for 2 weeks, and they were like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna give you an inhaler. We're going to give you prednisone, which I don't know if you've ever taken it, but it's miserable. Like maybe like it was almost as bad as just being sick. So I took that for a week, and I had the inhaler, I had all kinds of crazy crap, and it ended, and I still am like very not like sick, but I'm still like clearing my airways, shall we say, and it is gross.
Sure.
So that's about where I'm at. So enjoy my nasally voice for another week. There is a ton of stuff going on. So much stuff. So we're going to cover, obviously, just sort of catching up, Pro Tour stuff. The Ultimate Masters spoilers started this week, which is like they blew me away already, and we're only like 60 cards in. And then after the break, we're going to talk about just sort of normal podcast stuff, event results, what's going on with the format. We're going to talk about Arclight Phoenix, and then the SCG Invitational is coming up, so Zach is going to it. I did not qualify for it. I didn't really try. But regardless of which, Zach will be there. I will be parallel testing in Spirit with what I think I would play. And I think that's pretty much about what we got. So let's dive into the housekeeping. I got the proof for the playmat. It came in. It looks dope. So I'm ready to pull the trigger on the actual thing. Basically, I'm going to order them. I'm going to have them sent to Zach. Zach's going to sign them. He's going to send them to me. I'm going to sign them, and then I'm going to mail them out. So now is the time. This is happening. If you would like to purchase one, you can go to bigcartel.com and click on the thing and buy one, and we'll send it to you. Yay!
Woo!
What's that?
I said I just gave you a woo.
Oh, all right. I'll take it. Look, I'm taking all the enthusiasm I can get right now because I'm struggling.
Fair.
So our Deck Builder affiliate link is still active. We have obviously talk about Deck Builder every week. They're a sponsor of the show. You can check out all of their various and sundry wares at store.decked.builder.com/T, the number one Thoughtseize. And we get a little bump from that. I want to say welcome and thank you to our new patron, Mark, who actually signed up earlier today before we started recording. So like right in under the wire.
Dude, shout out to you, Mark. You're the real MVP.
Yes, you are the real MVP.
But also all the other patrons, because you guys
yes,
really
and
keep us running.
Yes, and all of the other patrons. And what else? I forgot to I will put a link. Zach in his post Pro Tour Victory Lap wrote an article for Cool Stuff Inc. About his deck and all that sort of stuff. So we talked about it a little bit on the Discord, but there's more information in the article, which I will post a link to in the show notes, so you can check that out down bottom.
Yeah, I tried. It's the first article I've ever written for like a major website, and I try to do it different than most of the articles you read. It was more of like a new to standard crash course on how to approach and play the deck, more so than like a in-depth like strategy guide, like this sideboard this out here, sideboard that out there. It's more just like how are we approaching matchups and what is the right way to play it, I guess. And I think it turned out pretty well. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know how everyone feels about it, but I've gotten some positive results so far, or feedback, I guess. So
it was very readable and it made sense. It wasn't like rambling nonsense.
Sure.
So
yeah, so if you get a chance to read it and want to give me some feedback, I would really appreciate it.
Who, me?
Well,
I mean, I did read it.
No, everyone.
Oh, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone listening.
Wow. All right. No, that's fine. I see how it is. Okay. So other than coming in 13th at your very first Pro Tour, which is a astounding achievement, what else have you been doing past couple weeks?
Well, mostly that, almost exclusively that, in fact.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you can imagine, coming in 13th is just mind-blowing. I did not expect to do that well at all. I think there was quite a bit of luck that came my way. But, obviously there was a bunch of testing on it with it, and that has kind of been what I was doing the last month. I mean, we've kind of had a bit of a spotty release schedule the last month, and most of it has been due to me not having very much time. We had Jay Dean fill in for an episode, and I really appreciated that. She did a fantastic job. But yeah, I mean, I've been playing just a ton of standard, just trying to get ready for this PT, and it was my first one, like you said, and it's a lot of pressure. It's hard to get to them. It's hard to get to go back for sure, and I really wanted to make the most of the opportunity, and I think I did. So it was really cool.
Indeed. So obviously we're not going to do like a round by round recap, because it's a very long event. I guess I didn't fully appreciate just how kind of grueling the schedule for that day is.
Dude, you are not kidding. It is really like, I mean, you play 15-round tournaments. People do that all the time, right? You go to an SCG, it's 15 rounds. You go to a Grand Prix, it's about 15 rounds, depending on how many buys you have. But this is 16 rounds, and like, let me tell you, none of them are easy at all. They're all brutal. Like, there's no one there that doesn't deserve to be there. It's really hard to get to a PT, and if you get there, like, you earned it, right? So every round is just really tough, and I mean, it was kind of a different experience for me because, I'm kind of used to at this point going to big tournaments. The first round or so, you're not playing against the best people in the event generally. I mean, sometimes you get paired against a really good player, that happens, but it's unlikely you're playing against the best person in the event in the first round because there's just so many people there still, right? But I sat down at the PT and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm playing against a gold pro round one. Like, you better get ready. And yeah, I mean, I got pretty lucky in the round, and it came down to just literally a top deck on the last turn of game 3, and that it won me that game and kind of led to a good event, I guess. But yeah, it is tough. Every single round you're playing against somebody you know the name of, somebody you've seen play, somebody you respect. I didn't fully appreciate how hard they were until I actually sat down and did it, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, even watch it, obviously not that I was watching the coverage. It was a lot easier on me because I could just kind of hang out. But it was hard to watch.
Sure.
It was just so much going on.
Well, and yeah, and it really is mentally like just draining. Like I don't remember ever being as tired after a Magic event as I was after day one of the PT. I was just like, I was done. I was ready to, we went, ate food, and I immediately passed out and slept the rest of the night right until when I had to wake up for day 2. So yeah, it's no joke. the amount of mental energy, like the toll it takes on you is tough, and it's long too. There's like, it's 8 rounds, but there's, it feels like a full round you spend like drafting and deck building, and there's like a lunch break, so it's a really long day too.
So just to sort of give people an illustration of who you may end up facing at a pro tour, JD and Comparons had quite a row of contenders to make her day one. So she started off, she played against Yelko Bodois. I do not know who that is. Round 2, Eric Furlick. Round 2, Shota Yasuoka. Round 4, Paul Rietzel. Round 5, Max McVitie. Round 6, Marcio Cavallo. Round 7, Seth Manfield.
Yep. It's just all names of great players, right?
Not, there's no fish there.
Nope.
Right? All whales.
Yeah, and they're all good, and all the matches are just brutal, man. It's really tough.
Yeah. So, obviously, this is a extreme example.
Yeah, she has a very that is tougher than the field I faced. I'm not going to lie to you, definitely.
Oh, sure.
But at the same time, it's like, even people that aren't playing that field, you're still sitting down. And you're like, wow, okay, well, that's a Hall of Famer I'm playing against. Okay, next round. Oh. Okay, I'm playing against, random guy. Oh, this guy won the Magic Online Championships last year. Like, this guy, won 2 Grand Prix last year I was watching. It's just like, you just see people that you saw winning because that's how they got there, right?
Right. I'm playing against the guy that narrowly lost Player of the Year yesterday.
Yep. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's no joke. But let's dive in to kind of how I prepared for it instead of talking about how hard it is. So, to get ready for the event, obviously we kind of talked about I was put on a team, and the team was me, Ari Lax, Corey Burkhart, Max McVitie, Tyler Hill, and Stu Parnes, and we kind of had this, allegiance to the store. We all play at the same store, RIW Hobbies in Livonia, Michigan. And that's kind of how the team got put together, and that's how we know each other. But we had no real team affiliation before that. So for testing, we were kind of all on our own. Ari and Corey both had teams they were previously testing with that they had agreed to continue testing with before our team had even been mentioned. So when we asked them to be on our team, it was kind of like, well, they wanted to play with us, but they'd already made all these other plans, and we were like, oh, that's fine. I mean, if you want to be on a team with us, cool. Do what you got to do. We'll do what we got to do, and we'll see how this goes. So a lot of the testing was kind of by myself with some sporadic testing with teammates. I maybe got to see them once a week, and then it was kind of just talking to people I know and playing online, just kind of outsourcing everything I could, trying to gather information from podcasts and websites. It was a tough road. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of jealous looking at like the testing processes other people had. But at the same time, it's like, you just got to take it into your own hands. You can't just like hope, some X team is going to call you up and be like, hey, will you come test with me? It's like, they're never going to do that. I don't have any, crazy results like everyone else on those teams do. So like, why would they call me? Right. And I think Jay Dean wrote an awesome article about this too, about testing by yourself or like with one friend or whatever. And I honestly, like, it took me a lot of work, like it probably more work than some other people put in, but I think that was good for me. I think that really helped. Like, it took me a lot of exploring to feel prepared, but it really, really prepared me for draft, which I think I would have been less prepared for on a team, honestly. Because I had to do all this exploring myself. I knew what I thought was good and how, like, what cards actually work with my play style. And I disagreed with a ton of lists I was seeing out there, but that was like, I think that was good for me because it was like, well, I know why I disagree and I know like how I want to play the games when I'm playing the games. So it really let me kind of make those tough picks in draft that, a pick order might lie to you about. So I think that was really cool for me. And the other thing too was just like, I think in testing, all the big teams kind of get locked into, we're all going to play the same deck. They kind of have this inbred metagame, and they're kind of all like influencing each other, I guess. So it kind of just it gets a little inbred. It wasn't like super inbred, obviously. They all had like pretty good decks, but I do still feel like I was semi-advantaged on just, I just went straight off of Moto and just Magic Online results and, talking to people who were playing on Magic Online. And, I reached out to other people I knew that, weren't even necessarily going to the Pro Tour, but, I know as good players. And I was just, hey, what's your opinion on this? Hey, can you help me, test this matchup? Hey, can you, play a bunch of this deck against, this build I have of this deck? And, basically what it comes down to is like my testing was super selfish because nobody else I was testing with was going to the PT, so it was all just centered around me, which ended up being very beneficial to me because I think I ended up finding a very good deck and I knew how to play all the matchups very well. Whereas like some people on PT teams, they just kind of trust that their teammates did all this work and they might switch to a deck 2 days before the event or whatever. And I had kind of been playing Jeskai the whole format, so I think that was really beneficial for me.
Well, I mean, we even saw that like in some of the camera matches. There were just errors in how cards functioned.
Yep.
And when they came back to them, they were like, "Oh yeah, I just picked up this deck yesterday. Like, I don't know how it all works."
No.
And I'm like,
"Yeah, that's fair." I mean, I think you're referring to Jeremy Desani with this, which there is some doubt as to whether how much he didn't know about the deck, but I don't want to dig into that. I do know because I talked to somebody that tested with him that he did switch to that deck literally the day before the event, and
yeah.
Obviously it paid off for him. Like he did well. I think he top aided, right? So it was clearly a good move on his part. But like you see where he has like this rust and this like I don't know exactly what's going on with this deck, and it was like he made the right decision trusting his teammates, but I don't think his team did particularly well and constructed outside of him. It could have just been like he did well in draft. And in fact, I think that's actually what it was, is that he did very well in draft and just did like good in standard but not insane. So yeah, and I think I benefited from that. So I don't know. This is like a message to the people that are trying to get there, is that if you're not on a PT team and you're testing by yourself, like you can do this. Like you can figure it out. You can sit down, you can find a testing process, you can reach out to friends you have, and you can figure out how to win matchups. And like this doesn't even just apply to like Pro Tour or standard testing. I mean, this is like a modern thing. Like you want to go to an SCG tournament next weekend, like you can talk to your friends and be like, "Hey, I need to know how to beat Tron, and I'm having trouble with my deck. Like, can we proxy a Tron deck and have you play some games against me?" And that's something that's like applicable to your everyday testing, and it works on the highest stage, I guess. So just want to let you guys know that you don't need to be on the best team to do well. You really don't. So, but that was my testing process. I came in feeling really prepared. Obviously, like I took off a bunch of time. I took off time from work. I took off time. From my podcasting duties, all of those things to put in these hours, and it really paid off when I got there. I felt really prepared, sat down to draft. My day one draft went okay, not great. I do think drafting online is a lot different than drafting in person, so that was kind of different for me, but came out with a 2-1, and then I'm not going to lie, I sat down my first round of standard and played a matchup that I was favored in, won game 1, and then played game 2 horribly. And I was nervous as heck the whole time. I knew the guy I was playing against. I knew he was pretty good. And I was shaking, and like the room was kind of dark. And none of these are good excuses, but I just punted away the match really, really badly. There's just like no chance I should have lost this game, and I ended up losing it just by making like 3 very bad plays in a row. And that's tough, man. Like, you're at your first PT, and there's all this pressure on you to do well and to, kind of prove that you're a good player, and then to just punt your first round of Constructed just really, it hurt, man. It did, and I went back, and I was really lucky, too, that I had, friends at the event, even though, like, it was my first one. So that is something that, not a lot of people have access to, and I had, friends come out to the event, and, like, specifically Catlight, who does Tournament Wild Nakata with me, came out, and they're all encouraging me, and it was awesome. It really, helped me pick up my head after that game, and get me back winning. So, I was 2-2 at that point, and then managed to rattle off 3 in a row, against some, other good matchups, and then, And then that was kind of where, when you're 2-2, you're not playing like the biggest name players, I guess. But I went 3 in a row, and I'm up to 5-2, and then like every round after that was just a big name player. It felt like, and that was the tough part. At 5-2, I play against Thiago Saporito, who's I think a platinum pro. He's like top.
Yeah, I think he hit platinum last because he topped something.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's like top 4 worlds before this guy. He's incredible, and I sit down against him, and we played 2 of the least close games of Magic I've ever played. He beats me in under 10 minutes, like no joke. just like, all right, 1 drop into 2 drop into 3 drop into 4 drop, and you're dead on turn 5, both games. I was like, okay, welcome to the PT, Zach.
Yikes.
Yep. So I go, like I said, we go out to dinner after that. It was cool to hang out with friends, but I got to we got to go out, hang out with my whole team, but immediately after that I crash, just very tired, go right to sleep, wake up the next morning, you're right back at it too, because you start early. You're drafting at 9 a.m. And my day 2 draft was just a complete disaster. And I think if you were following along on social media, Kat posted like a video of me just talking about how bad the deck was, and it really was horrible. This is one of the worst decks I've ever had, and I still like look back on the draft. And it was like, I don't even know what I could have done different, because the draft was just a complete disaster. Like every pick I got seems like I made, at least it may not have been the right pick, but it was like, I had an argument for the pick I made, I guess.
Sure.
And my deck after just had no win conditions in it. Like I had like 7 creatures in my deck. One of them was a 4/3 flying mythic, which was really good. And then 5 of them were 1/4s. And then I had like a 3/2. So like I just like couldn't kill my opponent. Like I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I didn't have a single removal spell on my list. And
nice.
I was lucky enough to get 2 disinformation campaigns, which we've actually talked about for Modern. And is just a very busted card in draft. So that card was really good, but the rest of my deck was terrible.
Sure.
And I had a Drown Secrets, which is like a mill card. It says whenever you cast a blue spell, you can make your opponent put the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So I'm building my deck after, and I realized that like I tried to go Sultai, so I have a bunch of green cards in my sideboard, but I didn't get a single dual land because everyone was drafting them at my pod. So I have a bunch of green cards I can't play, and I have exactly 24 blue and black cards in my pool total. This is probably including like 20 playable. There are probably 4 cards that are very, very unplayable in this pool.
Okay.
So I'm just like, all right, I'm just playing a straight blue-black deck with no fixing, and we're just going to see how this goes. And round 1, I mulligan to 5 twice and get crushed, and I was like, okay, well, the wheels are coming off here. This is it. And then the next round I play against a guy who plays a Niv Mizzet on turn 6, which is just the absolute best card in the entire set.
Yeah.
And I think I'm dead.
Card's real good.
But I play my Drown Secrets, and it turns out Niv makes you draw a card, so I actually got to mill him out with Niv Mizzet, like making him draw the cards, which is wild. And then game 2 played out in a similar fashion, where I just like had the Drown Secrets, and I just made him mill out. And then game 3 I'm playing it, or round 3 I'm playing against Dmitry Budakov, who won the Magic Online Championships, and like has played in Worlds multiple times. He's just like an incredible player. And I'm talking to him, and he says the same thing. He says his deck stinks, and it turned out like everybody at the pod just had a really terrible deck, and we were all confused on what was going on. And we all like just a complete mess. And I ended up beating him again with Drown Secrets. So it was crazy. I managed to win 5 games in a draft without dealing lethal combat damage 1 time, which just does not happen in this format. Like there's no like mill archetype. It's just like I had the one card that mills cards in the format, and like I just drew it enough that I won games, I guess. So
yeah, so as the flip side, right, like from the outside, I am seeing the other people in your pod posting on social media about how bad all of like the picks were. Like, so you were complaining about like how terrible your deck was, and I was like, everybody's deck is terrible. Like that pod just had like a trash pool of cards, except for a couple of like splashy mythics.
Well, so we found out after what happened, which I don't know how interesting it is for this podcast, but I'll tell you what happened is everybody opened really good blue cards and black cards. So there were 5 Dimir drafters at the table. And usually when there are that many people drafting Dimir, people switch off because all the blue and black cards dry up. Except all of the packs at the entire table were weighted like just heavily on blue and black cards. Like they were just all like above average percentage of blue and black cards in every pack. So every single person stayed in Dimir, so we're all cutting each other. It was just a disaster. And so like everyone's playing like Dimir splash some color with no fixing because everyone's fighting over the fixing. And like none of the other cards were playable. And then so what happens is there's like 2 Sultai players, 2 Izzet players, 2 more Dimir players, and then like a guy playing Grixis, and there's one person playing Naya who just had the most broken deck at the table by miles, and he just easily 3-0'd. Because he got all the Selesnya and all the Boros cards, and everyone else is fighting over cards. So it was a wild draft. We all had terrible decks, but it was a good learning experience. It's like, for me, I honestly thought my PT was done when I had this deck, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, I can't play with this. It doesn't win games, but it just kind of goes to show. It's like, well, you can't quit there. You just got to keep fighting, right? So, managed to sneak out of there at 7-4, which, if you told me before the event, like you're gonna have just a 7-4 record going into the last round of draft, I would have taken it for sure. And the goal is to 11-5 because 11-5 just means I get invited back to the next PT.
Right.
That was all I wanted because I think the next PT is going to be modern, and so I'm really hoping to get to go play it, right?
Yep.
And then I go on this kind of like magical run where I'm just playing like really good players every round, just players I know. Like I knew every name, every player I played against the rest of that day, and it was crazy. It was like multiple Hall of Famers, wild run. And I just
you played against Andrew. Like the Ellenbogen, the guy that won.
I did play against the winner, although that was day 1. But I did play against him.
You played against him, and I remember because I posted about it in the Discord because somebody asked, and the pairings don't get updated very quickly on the Wizards website.
Sure.
So I was like, oh, he's playing against da-da-da. And I looked him up because I had no idea who he was. And I was like, oh, he's another Michigan guy.
Yep. Yeah, I actually tested with him. That was the wild thing, was I was testing with him for the event at some points. But yeah, I played against him, and he was in my first draft pod, and that was my mistake in the first draft pod was passing him a completely broken Boros deck where I could have had that deck, but I'm not going to complain, obviously. We finished with the same record. We were both 12-4 after the Swiss, and he just had better tie breaks than me, so he was in the top 8 and I wasn't, so...
That's crazy.
It is crazy, but it was like it was my first BT, right? So I think I got lucky with my standard deck. I think I just found a deck that I thought other people would find. Like I thought people would come to the same conclusions I did, but just somehow nobody did. And it really felt like I had just like a deck building advantage the whole event, which was wild. I would not have thought that would have been possible at all, but It did feel like that. I'd never played against another Niv Mizzet the entire event, and I think that card's just the best card in Standard, and I had 3 of them in my deck. So, I was really happy I was playing it. My opponents weren't, I guess.
Your passion, your seemingly lifelong passion for like very strong blue and red cards surrounded by a bunch of mediocre red, white, and blue cards.
Yep.
Seems it kind of paid off for you. So.
Oh yeah, this time it finally paid off one time.
Yeah, and now you can never play Jeskai again.
Yep.
I mean, you will.
I did. I played it again this weekend actually in Milwaukee, but
yeah.
I still think the deck's really good. I think Niv Mizzet is just the best creature in Standard, and nobody knew. Like maybe people knew at the PT, but nobody did anything about it. Like nobody was playing a bunch of Niv Mizzets in their deck like I was. So I don't know. It just felt like. It really felt like I just had like a deck building advantage in a lot of the rounds where it's like I was playing against players that were just better than me, and I was just like, well, Niv Mizzet, go ahead, and then they would just lose to the card. So
yeah, the card has a lot of text,
way too much text,
and a lot of there's no filler.
Nope,
right?
It's all very relevant text.
It's all real. It's all real stuff.
It all just says draw a card. I mean, that's what ends up happening. So you just draw all the cards.
All right, so let's see what we got here. Because I haven't looked at it since it came out.
Oh, I can read the card for you. I know this. I know this the hard.
A little bit.
It's blue, 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 red, red, red. So 3 blue, 3 red, 6 mana total. for a 5/5 flying legendary creature dragon.
Dragon
wizard, sorry.
Relevant.
It could be relevant,
Not really.
for sure.
Well, I mean, Wizard's Lightning. I
Yeah,
guess.
and there's a wizard counterspell too that could be relevant. But
Yep.
So that's the stats, and then it says whenever you cast, or whenever any player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. And then it also says in a separate line of text, whenever you draw a card, Niv-Mizzet deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So every time you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you or your opponent, you draw a card, and whenever you draw a card, you're pinging stuff. So it makes cards that you were already playing, like Opt, just ridiculous. Like 1 mana, instant speed, draw 2 cards, shock something. But like it's like even better than shock. It's like 2 separate 1 mana pings. So it's just like
Right.
all the cards you were already playing that were like average just become busted with him in play. And I mean, it's no secret. Like once he's in play, if you untap, you just generally win the game, and that happened a lot at the PT. So
Yeah, I mean, like Radical Idea, Chemist's Insight. Those if you tack on, a shock or a lightning bolt, are pretty great.
yeah, I mean, like the card Arc Lightning exists. It's 3 mana for a sorcery that like deals 3 damage divided as you choose. And when Niv-Mizzet is in play, you just get a free Arc Lightning at instant speed with your Chemist's Insights. It's wild.
Yeah, so I cannot believe he's still only $5. That is insane to
Well,
me.
he's just a rare, so he's not. I question why he wasn't
get it.
mythic. He feels like the best card in the set to me by a wide margin, but
Sure.
I guess they already had a mythic planeswalker or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, the RAL is it mythic?
Well, they had another one too. It was 1,000-Year Storm, which I guess
Oh,
feels like looks more broken, but is definitely less broken than Niv-Mizzet.
Correct. That is what the professionals like to refer to as a junk mythic.
Correct. Yeah. So anyway, long story short, PT was crazy. Met a lot of people. Had a really fun time. Seriously, like I know it's not easy to say like if you have a chance to go to a Pro Tour, right? Because everyone's already trying to. But
Sure.
Let me say this: that like if you spend a lot of time trying to go to the Pro Tour, the experience was worth it for me anyway. Like I know it came with me winning, but like just getting to meet a lot of people, getting to play Magic for 2 days straight, getting the whole testing experience was also like a lot of fun for me anyway, because it's like this giant puzzle you're trying to figure out. The anticipation of it, the travel, like it was just everything I wanted from a Magic trip, and it was awesome. It's gonna be one of my most memorable moments of my Magic career. So, totally worth it. If you are close and you're thinking about trying, I would encourage you to keep trying because it is awesome.
There you go. All right, Ultimate Masters. It is getting very real up in Ultimate Masters land. So for anyone who has been under a rock, there is a new Master set that is coming out very shortly, coming like a freight train. 2 weeks from now, I think they're doing a preview sealed at PAX Unplugged next week, or something like that, like a 2-headed giant or something you can sign up for. I think it's the same thing they did for Iconic Masters.
Sure.
Because I did the Iconic Masters one last year. And it was fine. This looks to be of a much greater power level, shall we say.
I don't know that it's more powerful, but it's definitely more moneyful.
I mean, it's more moneyful, but like there isn't the mythic slots are not Kamigawa dragons.
No, but like Kamigawa dragons are like more powerful in like a limited event, right? Like I'd rather have a Kamigawa dragon than Emrakul. Emrakul's unplayable in limited.
Yes, unless there's also Reanimate in the set.
Reanimate doesn't work with Emrakul.
Oh, that's right. What am I thinking of? There's something.
There's a Goryo's Vengeance in the set.
Goryo's Vengeance. Goryo's Vengeance is in the set. So, like, you can Goryo's Vengeance Emrakul, and Tomb is also in the set. So, like...
I mean, that could just be in your pool. You could have Goryo's Vengeance and Tomb and Emrakul, I guess. That's a wild combo, though.
I mean, it's like... It's a mythic and 2 rares. Like, that's very possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. Seems, I don't think that's something you're going to try to do very often. I'll put it that way.
And also, like, not for nothing, like, obviously, like, that's the nut, right? But, like, they also have old Ulamog.
Yep.
There's Lord of Extinction. He's a pretty solid target.
Reanimate your Tasigur.
Get him. Reanimate your Tasigur seems loose. Old Kozilek, like, the first round of Eldrazi Titans are all in there.
Reanimate Vexing
presumably.
Devil, dude. It's like two
Reanimate Vexing
lava
Devil.
spikes.
It's better than 2 lava spikes. No, actually, that was one of the things. I guess it didn't surprise me that Vexing Devil was in there, but like everybody that was holding on to their Vexing Devils, hoping they were gonna send their kids to college. So too bad, so sad. Vexing Devil, Vengevine, Through the Breach, where they finally acknowledged that like the only thing that anybody ever through the breach is Emrakul, so Emrakul's in the art.
No, it's two creatures. They had to pick between 2 of them.
Well, there's you either through the breach Emrakul, or you're losing and you through the breach a Simian Spirit Guide.
No, the other one is Primeval Titan.
Oh, sure.
That one sees a lot of through the reaching. But it's still flavorful to through the reach Emrakul that the picture is Emrakul. That makes sense.
Yes. And like through the breach Primeval Titan would just be weird on the art.
Yeah, because you'd also have to be like throwing mountains at people or something.
Yeah. Something strange.
Emrakul looks sweet. That's the point here.
It doesn't work.
Yeah,
the art is great though.
That's the point here.
It's the scene is Nahiri summoning Emrakul to blow up
Innistrad, supposedly. But no, I mean, back to your original point, I don't think this set actually looks great for limited. Looking at this, there's a lot of like very strange limited cards in the card, like the mythics that have been spoiled already, which makes sense. Like that's what people were asking for from the set. And honestly, like as a modern player, this set looks incredible. There are so many expensive modern cards that like we have just been complaining about like getting out of hand recently, and they're all here. It's not like they didn't miss any of them.
Yeah.
They have all of them. It's crazy.
Yeah, they really didn't do a lot of. I mean, they did cherry pick, quote unquote, but like Snapcaster, Liliana, Noble Hierarch, Tarmogoyf,
Cavern of Souls, Worldwake Manlands,
Cavern of Souls,
Goryo's Vengeance, Engineered Explosives, Vengevine, Karn, Gaddock Teague, Through the Breach, just like Life from the Loam, even just every single card that you can like, and then even like Legacy, like Back to Basics was insane expensive, and that's in the set too.
Yep. Yeah, Runed Halo finally got a reprint.
Yep.
That's something people have been rightly complaining about for a long time. Glenelander Archmage even.
Yeah, it's like a randomly very expensive card.
With new art.
Yep.
And the new art is nice. I mean, it looks more modern. The old art looks very block specific.
It does.
This looks more general.
I'm very partial to the old art. I like the old art a lot.
I do too.
But it still looks good. It's just like, come on, the old art's so good.
Yeah. I mean, Martyr of Sands at Common is going to be some long games. Long games, Martyr of Sands at Common.
Well, hopefully they don't also have the, I don't remember the card's called, where they buy back the 1-drop, the white spell.
Oh.
The forecast spell.
Proclamation of Rebirth.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Hopefully that one's on here too.
Yeah. And then like for the legacy nerds, it's like Caracas, Dark Depths, Ancient Tomb, Reanimate, Demonic Tutor. Well, Demonic Tutor's not legal in Legacy, but like Commander.
Yeah, Commander players are hyped about that Demonic Tutor.
Like Temporal Manipulation.
You know, Demonic Tutor's like a $50 card right now, or
Really?
like the Black Border one at least is. And like the beta and alpha versions are insane expensive. I'm not even talking about that.
Well,
There's like a Commander Black Border one that was like $50. Yeah, I didn't know. I had one from like 3 years ago. It was in a Commander deck, and I sold it. I was like, oh my god, that card was $50? What?
Wow. Okay. Bitter Blossom new art, Tarmogoyf new art, Life from the Loam new art, and the Life from the Loam new art is lit.
Yeah, the Life from the Loam art looks great. Tarmogoyf art, not so much, in my opinion.
I mean, I get it. I understand. I get it.
You can kind of tell what it is now, because before it just was very unclear what the card even was. It was just like a big thing. Now it's like a big thing with a lot of teeth.
Yeah.
Which I guess
so
it was before,
it's,
but
it's fine. I mean, some people will like it. Some people will dislike it. Like, I will continue to use my Future Sight ones until the end of time.
as you should. The Future Sight ones look great.
And that's it. Like, new Eternal Witness looks great. What else? New Fulminator Mage. Art looks great. Original painting sold for like $5 or $6 recently. So there's a lot of that. Phyrexian Altar, I think that's a commander card. There's already, like, the feel bad rares are already starting to pop up. Wall of Reverence. I would not be pleased if I spent $13 on a booster pack and my rare was Wall of Reverence.
No, I mean, I'm definitely with you on that, but I think there's something to be said for just, like, how much value you're going to get per pack in this. Like, there are multiple, like, even rares that are just, like, currently $50 or more.
Yeah,
even.
Easily. Yep.
Like, Engineered Explosives is just a rare in this, right? It's not even Mythic. And
yep. Engineered Explosives
that's literally like $100 card.
Yes. Yep.
And, I mean, there's other, like, Celestial Colonies, I think, were like $70 or something before this. And that's just another card at rare.
Yep. I mean, the set looks insane. Some of the draft archetypes that are starting to emerge, there's Wild Mongrel, Reckless Worm, and Faithless Looting are all in there. So there's a theoretical draftable, like, Madness archetype.
Yeah.
And
it looks like there'll be like a black sacrifice deck. There's multiple sacrifice outlets and, like, reanimation outlets.
Yeah.
So
I will be not surprised to see probably, I'm trying to think what else goes in there. Fiery Temper goes in there. I'm a little surprised they put Wild Mongrel instead of Noose Constrictor, but who knows? Maybe there's some color relevant, like,
no, man, it's a feels thing. It's a feels.
Wild
Mongrel was considered
do that.
Wild Mongrel was considered the best 2-drop of all time for like 4 or 5 years. Even like the best creature.
If you're gonna do that, then, like, reprint, like, Arrogant Worm, like, have them be together.
I mean,
instead of printing, like,
but you don't know that they're not.
They're not going to print Reckless Worm and Arrogant Worm, which are literally the exact same card in 2 different colors.
Can't say that. You don't know. They might.
Okay, sure.
What?
I guess they might.
Come on, Tribal Worms in draft? Are you not in?
I'm not.
What?
In.
I'm calling bull. You are in for Tribal Worms. I know you are. I
mean, I would play it.
Definitely.
Like, if they had, if Arrogant Worm, Reckless Worm, Wild Mongrel, and Noose Constrictor were all in this set, yes, I would draft that constantly.
See, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, but I also drafted, like, Enchantress in one of the master sets, and it was terrible.
Okay, but the Worms deck is going to be sweet.
So the theoretical Worms deck that does not exist.
What if they put Weird Harvest in here too?
Sure,
dude.
Actually, you know what I'd like to see? I would like to see Zur's Weirding, new border, old art.
Now I'm getting excited. I'm thinking Life from the Loam, Worm Harvest, or Weird Harvest, whatever the one that makes worms is. All of the worms in Wild Mongrel. This is a deck. Or is it Early Harvest? What is the harvest card that makes worms?
It's a Worm Harvest.
Worm Harvest?
It's Retrace, though. I don't think I would be very surprised if they had, like, one random Retrace card in here.
Yeah, they might have, like, a Flame Jab or something. We don't know. We'll find out. Whatever. That
was already in a master set. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Bottom line is, the set looks amazing. It is chocked to the brim with value. And
wait, does Vengevine count as a worm?
No.
It's like semi-worm-like.
It's an elemental.
I mean, I know it's an elemental. It could be like an elemental worm.
It's not.
It could be.
But it's not.
Let's brew a modern worms deck after the Envy.
You know, you were the one that was complaining about starting late, so I just want to, like, point out that the, like, who's on first, what worms are going to be in Ultimate Masters, like, little go round that we just had is 100% on you.
That's fair. I deserve that.
The thing that is, you know, the important takeaway is even if you never buy a pack of this set, so like obviously like people have already been like, oh, I can't believe the box price is so high, this, that, and the other thing. There are two things that have happened. One thing that has happened, and one thing that will happen. So the one thing that has happened, which I think was counterintuitive, is the MSRP is so high. It's like $335, I think, if you were to like just charge bone stock. So people were anticipating that people were going to be selling it for more than that, or that it would be difficult to get at MSRP. And what's happening now is the competition for to move the boxes is so high because there's so much stuff in it that it's actually depressing the price. And I mean, I'm seeing plenty of places where you can get boxes for $250, and like I guarantee you, there's more than $250 in that box.
Oh, $250 in marked card prices is like a horrible box. Like you would have to get very unlucky just to get $250 out of this. Like very unlucky, based on just like the cards we're seeing.
So that's a sort of thing that has already happened. The thing that will happen is all of the prices for these will tank. And for people that just buy singles, that's amazing.
Well, we don't know that the prices are actually going to tank. So that depends more on like player base. Like if the player base stays constant, then yes, prices will tank. But if player base increases, then the prices might tank initially, but will go back up.
Well, that's always what happens.
But the thing I think that people miss is that these cards are now available to you. So like something that, like, yes, you can order cards online, but something I see every day when I go to my store is somebody will come in and they'll be like, hey, I want to buy a Noble Hierarchs from the store. And my store just doesn't have any because everybody who has Noble Hierarchs like doesn't sell them because they want their Noble Hierarchs because they play with them, right? And if the store wants to get Noble Hierarchs, they have to go to like a GP and then try to buy Noble Hierarchs, which people might not even sell them. And if they do sell them, they might get like 4, right? And then they'll have like 4 Noble Hierarchs and they'll come back and they'll sell them right away and then they still just like won't have them. And it like, yeah, that's just like my store, but that's like all of the local stores. Like that's like a lot of places where people just play Magic, right? And I even play at like a bigger store. It's like not that hard for them to get cards, but there are still just like modern staples that will just be sold out all the time because nobody sells them because they're just hard to find and they want these staples, right? And so even if you don't buy a single box of this, the fact of the matter is like the store you play at is going to buy and open these boxes so that they have product to sell you. And they're going to happily do that because it's a good value for them to do so. And then you're going to be able to buy the cards that you want to play with, which is awesome.
All right, so the last time Noble Hierarch got reprinted, it dropped down to $40. And then right before the announcement that it was getting reprinted, it was $80.
Yeah, almost the whole time.
Almost the whole time with a couple of spikes that were like almost 90.
And this card has never been mythic, mind you. Like this has always been a rare.
Always been printed at rare. So what happened was when it got reprinted last time and it went down to $40, I bought a set of them because I wanted them.
Sure.
And I was going to play with them. And then they went up to $80 and I was like, I'm not going to play with these again before they get reprinted. So I'm going to sell them. And I did. And I got a bunch of money for them.
I made a huge mistake with Hierarch. I'm just going to throw this out there. When Modern Masters 15 came out, that was like the first Masters set I was playing Magic for. I was really, really excited for them. And I had just made a bunch of money from my job. I just got like a bonus or something, so I bought like 4 boxes of the first Modern Masters. It's a very bad investment on my part. And at the time, everyone was talking about these cards tanking. And I opened all my boxes, and I thought they were all garbage because I didn't make my money back. And it turned out I opened 7 Noble Hierarchs and sold them all for like $25 at the time. Which was just like one of the worst Magic moves I've ever made in my entire life. It was a big time disaster.
Yikes.
Yeah, it was bad. I think I had 2 foils too.
Yeah, so I sold them when they were around 80.
Well, see, that's how you do it. That's much smarter than what I did.
Yes, it is. It is. So now the reprint, they are already starting to go down. They're like from 80, they're like I said 60 whatever 69, which is nice. And you can certainly get like lightly played ones if you're not like a nut job about condition. They've lightly played ones on Card Kingdom for $51, and they will continue to go down.
Sure.
So I would say if you want Noble Hierarchs, you should shake the hand of whomever was involved in making the decision to put them in this set. Same with Life from the Loam. Like, these are a lot of like oddball cards that have very specific mechanics that are tied to, that are either A, in the case of Dredge, never going to be reprinted, or in the case of Exalted, specifically tied to a plane. So they can't just drop Noble Hierarch into a standard set that isn't set on Alara, because it doesn't make any sense. And even in a core set, they would still have to have like devote part of the set to Exalted.
Yes.
And it's just not, I don't know, it's not clean.
Yeah, they probably won't do that.
Whereas like in a master set, like, yeah, whatever, I'll throw it in, who cares?
Yep.
I mean, they're reprinting Lord of Extinction, for God's sake. Like,
that card's not relevant and hasn't been relevant for a long time, but it's sweet in Commander.
Correct. But it was $30 some, $40 some.
Yeah, it was sweet in Commander. I think it had like a Amonkhet Masterpiece printing too somehow.
It did. Yeah. Yes. Like, yeah, it was a $15 card.
Sure.
That's too much for that card. And I'm sure that people that played Commander were very grumpy about having to spend $15 on this.
I believe it. But yeah, so
I mean, I would be.
Let's wrap up on this though. One big point I want to get across to people with this:
they're reprinting Rune Snag.
Yes, they are reprinting Rune Snag. I mean, there's gonna be more that comes out, and it looks like the pattern so far is the stuff that's coming out is good, and like you're gonna be happy. You're gonna be happy with what's in the set. And I think that's the trend so far, and it looks like it's gonna be an awesome set, fun to draft, and that's kind of the next point I wanted to get to with it is that it's really expensive, and not everybody can afford to buy a box of this for sure, and that's just what it is. Like, sometimes you can't, but I would advise strongly that if you're interested in Modern and you can play in like an event that your local store puts on where maybe it's like a draft event where you get 3 packs and you maybe have a chance to win like 2 or 3 more, like it is definitely worth it with this set to do that, just based on how crazy the value can be in these packs, where it's like there's foils in the packs. Like, you could you could open like a foil Snapcaster and like a Liliana in the same pack. Like, that's like a $200 value or something. It's crazy. So, if you can play like a store event, win a couple packs, like I would strongly advise you do it. And it's, just judging on past experience with sets like this, it's only going to be there for a short time. Like, there's only this like 2-3 month window where there are events like that happening. And I would, encourage you, if you have a chance to get to one of those, you should definitely do it, because the value in the set is there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Also, they reprinted Seismic Assault with new art. That's like a sick throwback to the original Seismic Assault art.
I was going to say, I thought it was just like literally a picture of you. It's like your
I mean, kind of. I mean, this is the first Black Border Seismic Assault that I would own.
That's fair.
Like, I wouldn't, like, the 7th edition foil's really expensive.
That is also true.
So
yeah, that's true.
And like, they're really hard to find in good condition. Like, those 7th, 8th edition foils are just generally dodgy, and I don't like to buy them if I'm not in person.
Sure.
Because I'm not big on foils anyways, and they're very prone to clouding and stuff. But Seismic Assault, new art, the Leave to Chance Seismic Assault deck, it's so good. It's so good. Oh my god, dude.
Should I play it at the Envy?
You will get some people, because like it's Scape Shift or like Leave to Chance Seismic Assault.
Like, I'm gonna pass, but it sounds sweet. It sounds like something I want to brew with.
Yeah, it definitely it does the thing. Like, when it goes off, it goes off, and a lot of times, like I said, you just win with Scape Shift. So it's normal. Like, it is a normal deck. It's just, instead of your backup plan being Primeval Titan, your backup plan is like seismic assault stuff
Sure.
and mulch. Don't play it in the Invitational.
I will not.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be right back for part 2. So hang on to your biscuits. There was a SCG Modern Classic in Vegas last week. There were a number of IQs also last week. Modern Challenge, competitive leagues, etc., etc. It's a lot of linear decks. Humans, Burn, Dredge. I guess you could consider Spirits to be fairly linear. Like, they can curve out if they're in just like full aggro mode.
Yeah, it's less linear than the other archetypes, but it kind of preys on linear decks, I guess. It feels more like Fairies, where it's like a tempo counterspell beatdown deck, but
so that's, if you're not going to play one of those decks, you should have a plan for them, because that is likely what you're going to be facing. I mean, the percentage wise, like, everything is basically between like 3 and 6%. There's just like round numbers, but like slanting more towards like Dredge, Humans, Tron, Band Spirits are kind of like the big ones right now. I really like white sideboard cards, personally.
well, they're not even sideboard cards anymore. Now they're main deck cards.
Well, I mean, like, Stony Silence, rest in peace, like that kind of thing. And even I would even consider at this point, like, I think Tocatli Honor Guard is close. Like, I'm torn as to whether or not it's like Torpor Orb or Honor Guard, because like Humans, Bant Spirits, like these decks are so cold to Torpor Orb effects. I don't think that people really get that, because I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing that as like the hate piece strategy. And I mean, it literally just turns both of those decks into extremely mopey creature decks where they're just playing like almost vanilla creatures, or sometimes worse than vanilla creatures.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that card is definitely great against some of the decks, and it's it's going to shut down Humans for sure. It is less good against some other ones, but like doesn't really do anything against Dredge. But you probably have other hate cards for those spots. So
interestingly, it does do something against Dredge, because
really?
It takes away their Prized Amalgam trigger.
Wait, really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, Bloodghast ETB doesn't trigger Prized Amalgam anymore.
Okay, that's interesting. Actually, I didn't realize that. I don't think it's enough to beat Dredge, but
it's definitely not. But if you're in that world where you're like, this is the only thing that I have, or like it doesn't do nothing, I guess is the point. And if you can come back with another hate piece and something aggressive, it means that the Prized Amalgams only trigger off Narcomoeba flips. So, like I said, it would not be my first choice, but it's not a blank.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, it's a card, I guess.
I mean, like I said, Honor Guard, I guess I'm not as sold on Honor Guard unless I'm also playing an Ether Vial deck.
Yeah,
I think that's like,
I mean, Honor Guard would be a lot more interesting if it because it is a human. If it worked in Humans, unfortunately, it's like it hoses your own deck, so it doesn't really have a place there. But it's not like, I mean, hey, it's not inconceivable you could put it in a white deck. Like, it has application for sure.
Yep. but I would definitely I would consider 2 torpor orbs in the side. If you're going to a big event, I think you could do a lot worse, because your other option is just overload on removal, which is fine, but they have a lot more creatures than you could possibly have removal. You don't have 37 removal spells.
Well, no, you don't. But the other thing that's less interesting about removal right now is that the dominant deck is Dredge, right? And Dredge just laughs in the face of all the removal. So you can load on removal to beat some of the linear decks and then just get hosed in other ones where it just does not matter. You might go from playing against Dredge, where the removal doesn't do anything, to humans, where it's great, to playing against a Mardu Arclight Phoenix deck that's playing Lingering Souls and just have your removal still do nothing.
Yep.
So, you're kind of in an interesting spot with that, but I think some of the removal spells are getting better than other ones, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the one thing I want to make clear from the recent Modern results that we're seeing just a sweeping change in the format is that Dredge is almost like tier 0 at this point in Modern, where it's you need to beat Dredge or it's going to beat you. So you have to prepare and be ready for that. And if you can't beat Dredge at all, you probably shouldn't be playing that deck. So the good news is there are colorless options to beat Dredge that work. I mean, the colorless options aren't as good as some of the colored options, but you can play Grafdigger's Cage, and you can play Tormod's Crypt, and you can play Relic of Progenitus, and these cards do work against Dredge. So, you need to prepare for Dredge. But the thing with Dredge is that it's forcing all these decks to change, and it's forcing, strategies that were previously, very good, tier 1 even, to just completely switch their game plan, Where, a deck we're starting to see pick up in popularity is blue-white control. But, and people are used to seeing blue-white control, but the list we're seeing now has 3 main deck Rest in Peace, which is wild. Nobody plays Rest in Peace main deck, right?
Yeah, I would argue that is even kind of overkill.
Well, so I agree with you, but it makes sense from the deck's perspective in that blue-white is so bad against Dredge. It's so unbelievably bad against Dredge that the deck is just not playable when Dredge is doing what it's doing to the format right now. And Rest in Peace is so good against Dredge that having this card main deck makes sense for that archetype.
Oh, geez, that's funny. That's that winning blue-white control deck was the one that took first place in my LGS.
Sure.
He did not play for Rest in Peace. He did not play Rest in Peace in the main.
Well, and it might not always be right, but that is a deck we're starting to see online is this 3 Rest in Peace blue-white deck, and it's a very odd approach to the format because there are some decks where it just doesn't do anything. You have 3 Rest in Pieces against your deck, or in your main deck, and you play against humans or spirits. What are you even doing with this card? It doesn't do anything. It's mostly worse for you than them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess against spirits it has some minimal upside in the sense that if you lose super hard to Moorland Haunt, I guess it's not 0.
Well, it's 0 in the sense that it's a mulligan up until that point, right, where it just doesn't do anything. But it also comes with deck building costs. One of the best blue cards in the format is Snapcaster Mage, and it's always been one of the best blue cards in the format. And you don't get to play with it because you're playing main deck Rest in Peace.
Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, you play Logic Knot. That's Logic Knot is a good card.
You don't when you play 3 main deck Rest in Peace.
You do not. I will say, from what I have seen, and this is especially true against Tron, because Jeskai versus Tron is the saddest Panda matchup almost ever in the world.
Yeah.
Because your Lightning Helix looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
And your Lightning Bolts are useless.
Oh, they still kind of go face, but yeah.
Yeah. If you're on that plan, I've got some bad news for you. So if you're going to play control, if you insist on playing control, if you're that person.
Well, definitely if your name is Zach.
Like, if your name is Zach, or if you are another person who just absolutely insists on playing some sort of blue-white something, just play regular blue-white control. Because it's great against Tron. And you wouldn't think that. But they go turn 3 Tron, and you go turn 3 Tron Karn, and you go negate. And they're like, oh, untap Worm Coil Engine, and you go path. The only thing that you care about that they're doing is Ulamog, kind of, but by the time that he comes down, like, whatever, like,
what?
Exiles 2 lands.
No, Ulamog definitely matters. I've played this matchup a decent amount. There are some cards that you care about a lot. Like Karn, you definitely care about. If you have the negate for it, it's good. If you don't, you're going to lose to it. The card that is just bonkers against them is Field of Ruin, though. And that's a card you get to play 4 of in your main deck, so that's nice.
Yeah, so four Field of Ruin and a Ghost Quarter in the main, plus, like, main deck things that just completely invalidate, like, many of, not all of, but many of their haymakers. And then they only have 12 cards that actually do anything other than get lands. So if you can keep them, either A, keep them off of Tron, or B, just like negate their payoff and then untap and slam a Jace and Fate Seal them for the rest of the game, they literally cannot win.
Yeah, I mean, I found the best card was Teferi. Teferi's insane against Tron. If you get it going, it just, you know, the emblem is just wildly unbeatable for anything once you get there, essentially. So it's also good against Tron. And being that, like, Planeswalkers are your win conditions, it means you care more about O-Stone than you should. But at the same time, like, I think the matchup is good. But I think, like, Dredge just put control in such an awkward spot for, like, multiple reasons. One is that your removal is not good against Dredge. It never is. You know, you basically start at, like, 8 life against them. I mean, it's probably more really, like, reasonable to say you started at, like, 11, but you probably fetched a little bit or whatever. So you're starting at, like, a much lower life total than you should because of Creeping Chill. And you can't really interact with Creeping Chill particularly well outside of, like, Rest in Peace or Relic of Progenitus. So that's a tough spot to be in. And then, like, the Archetype was already good against you, and the decks that are good against it are also good against control decks. Like you said, Tron, and like you said, you know, I mean, you didn't say, but, you know, Amulet Titan tends to be pretty good against control decks. Spirits is, like, pretty good against control decks generally. So,
well, any of the like disruptive aggro decks that can get under you, I mean, that's not much you can do about it.
Yeah,
right?
so
because that's a situation where, like, your island suspend Ancestral Vision go is very mopey, and they're just gonna go Champion of the Parish, Noble Hierarch, like, Mantis Rider kill you.
Yeah, no, and yeah, that happens. So, you know, I think we're at this point right now where control was, like, prior to Creeping Chill and Jedge, control was very, very good in Modern. It was, you know, probably the best it had ever been, honestly, because control has always been generally pretty bad. And it's worse than it was before because of how the format has changed. Which means, of course, that, like, humans and spirits got better, and, you know, even, like, affinity-style decks that were struggling against, like, the controlling decks all got better because their Predator kind of is taking a hit right now. And, you know, it means you got to adapt to the control decks. So I think that's what we're going to see next in Modern, is that, you know, we kind of already saw this adaptation of the main deck Rest in Peace control decks, and that's, you know, that's a step in the right direction for where control needs to go, but I don't actually think that's, like, the ending point, because it just is so bad. It's so bad in so many spots where it's like you're doing this because you have to do it, but it's not really the right way to approach those matchups, I think. So what I think is control is going to look for better answers to Dredge. And for me, the card I'm looking at right now is Anger the Gods. I think that's a better place to be because it's also good against the decks that are starting to come back because Control is leaving. Where it's like, it's good against Dredge. It actually does something against Dredge. And it's also very good against humans. It's also good against spirits. There's a lot of places where Anger the Gods plays pretty well. So, in my opinion, I think Control is going to move back towards, playing red-based spells. But we'll see if that actually plays out. But I think that's where I'm going to take it when I'm playing Control decks. We'll see. We'll see where this goes.
See, I would play Settle and keep the better mana base and just add Settle the Wreckage instead. Because I think you're there are a lot of other things that Field of Ruin is good against, like Field of Ruin and Ghost Quarter. I think having those in the main deck has enough value that three versus 4, but it also is kind of double pip of your splash color. That's a real cost.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the Jeskai mana base with Field of Ruin is a disaster. I've played it a couple times, and it's not unplayable. It's definitely something you can make work, but it's certainly not good. I'm not excited to play with this Jeskai mana base that's playing 4 Field of Ruins. It's generally pretty bad. But yeah, you can
Terminus helps, but I think that just having a reliable.
No, I think Terminus is actually pretty bad against Dredge. And it seems like it would be good, right? It seems like, we're going to put the threats in a spot where they can't get them. But what happens is, if you're a Terminus deck, you generally don't close the game particularly quickly. And then, you just put all these cards back in Dredge's library, and then they cast a Life from the Loam, and they get back a fetch land, and then they shuffle their library, and then they dredge some more. And then they put all those creatures right back in play. So, Terminus is worse than it looks against Dredge. So I don't know that that's actually the right way to go. Like I said, I think the tool you want is Anger if you're not going to go down this Rest in Peace route. And I think what that means is that you need to look at Control in a different fashion. Because I agree with your point that playing this in your this double red pip 3-drop as a splash color is a really bad play. I don't think that's the way you want to do it. So I think we need to get creative, and I think there's a lot of iterating Control needs to go through if it wants to remain top tier in Modern. And I definitely don't think it's there yet. But, I've got some ways to address that. We'll hit that in a little bit. Let's look at some of the other decks that have been kind of popping up, if you will. So, you already mentioned Dredge, right? And that's there. You talked about Tron. Tron's been doing good. We saw Amulet have some success. I don't think it's had as much success as it should have to this point, if that makes sense, where I think the deck is very good, and it should be winning more than it still is. And so I would recommend picking up Amulet. I think that's a good place to go right now. It's a very hard deck to play, but I think it's a good deck to play. So if you want to pick up a deck, that's a good place to start right now.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the speed bump to it is just it is a complicated deck. And it's not something that you're just gonna jump into because the cards, other than Primeval Titan, a lot of the cards are really weird and they don't go in other decks.
Well, that is true, but the good news about it is that a lot of them are pretty cheap.
Sure.
So you can pick up these bounce lands for pennies, essentially. More than that, but
the bounce lands are nothing, but amulets are getting pretty expensive.
Yeah, no, Amulet is.
Because I just looked bigger. Because that has not been reprinted. So, Amulet is a $20 card right now.
Yeah, that one's not cheap. But, we're talking about Modern. It's still expensive to get decks. We're talking if you're interested in picking a new deck, I think Amulet's a good place to go. Because you're right, it doesn't use a lot of cards that other decks use, but the expensive pieces are in other decks. One of the expensive pieces is a Cavern of Souls, maybe 2. And, you might have access to that. That's a fairly played card. You're not going to have Amulets, but it's not unheard of. You would have Azusa, which is one of the other expensive cards. You could have it for, green-red value. Tom was playing that card for a little bit. Primeval Titan's in, Valakut, but it's in a decent number of modern decks. It's seen a decent amount of modern play, so you might have access to that. And then the rest of the deck is not particularly expensive outside of that. There's a lot of commons there, so it's not super hard to get into. And I actually picked up the deck recently just for fun. I was just playing it in some leagues on the side. And I will say that it is very confusing and difficult to play, especially when you're first starting. But the learning curve is not as steep, I don't think, as some other decks that I have played, in the sense that it's very difficult at the beginning, and then once you kind of get the hang of it, the deck becomes much easier to play. And the lines, while being somewhat difficult, once you've kind of learned them, the deck starts feeling very intuitive and a lot easier, I guess. So, it's a very difficult deck to play like your first, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 50 to 100 games, whatever your learning pace is. It's difficult that first part, but then the part after that, you can play it at a very high proficiency after those first, after that initial steep learning curve, and do well with it. So it's just kind of can you devote a couple weeks into learning this, and if you can, then it's going to really pay you off.
Yeah, I think if you don't have that time, then I would probably look at Titan Shift.
Titan Shift is also very valid right now, and that's like I said before, Anger of the Gods very well positioned. That's a deck that gets to play main deck Anger. Right. It's a deck with a proactive game plan. I think it's really good right now.
It's interesting. So and I see this sort of with Humans and Spirits, and then Titan Shift and Amulet. There's a lot of sort of squishy crossover between the two decks, and tech from each deck that you could kind of use in the other one. A lot of the Spirits decks I've seen have started playing Reflector Mage. A lot of the Humans decks, or not a lot of, but some of the Humans decks have started to put some number of Spell Quellers in. I think that's an interesting thing to kind of look at, and there's probably a middle ground sort of hybrid deck that sort of figures out what the numbers are. What's the best number of X to play in each one? And I think that there's probably something similar to that in between Amulet and Titan, because some of the sideboard plans for Amulet Titan are amazing and could very easily be played in Titan Shift. Just playing Rurik Thar is literally unbeatable for a number of decks, and in Titan Shift you can do it on turn 3, I believe.
You can do it on turn 3. You kind of need a very specific draw, but you definitely can.
So turn 3, turn 4, you get a 6/6.
No, you can't do it on turn 3. You can only do it on turn 4.
Okay. Well, if you play the Explore version, I think you might be able to get there. No, you'd have to do something weird. No. Yeah. So let's say turn 4.
You're mostly going to have 5 mana on turn 3.
Yeah. So you go, here's my 6/6 Vigilance Reach that attacks every turn, whatever. But whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, it does 6 damage to them.
Yep.
That's a lot of damage, man.
Yeah, that's going to end the game real quick.
And so you play that out against control, and if they immediately, even if they path it right there, they still take 6.
Yeah, that card's no joke.
That's huge.
Especially in a deck with Valakuts, right? Where it's you dealt with this. How did you answer it with a path? Oh, I'm pretty close to 7 mountains. Uh-oh.
Right. Oh, fetch land, kill you. Play a Steve and a fetch land, 6 you.
Yep.
And you're dead. Same thing, a fast Hornet Queen. So you get 5 bodies, 6 power, and they all fly and they all have Death Touch.
Yeah, it's a tough card to attack through, generally.
Okay, human, what's your plan?
Yep. Well, so, you're right. There are things we can do with these decks. And I like where the big mana decks are right now. I think they're well positioned. And they're not like the only thing we're seeing too. Like we're seeing KCI come back. KCI was kind of getting pushed out a little bit by blue-white being very popular. Just having to play against Stony Silence every round is tough. And to be fair, like, you know, Spirits is playing Stony Silence too. You know, that's a tough place to be. So, you know, KCI is coming back, and so the artifact decks are also doing good. I mean, we're seeing like kind of right before our eyes, Hardened Scales Affinity just replacing Normal Affinity at this point.
Yeah.
Where it almost
Hardened Scales.
It almost feels like Normal Affinity isn't even a deck anymore, and it's just Hardened Scales is just the Arcbound Ravager deck of the format.
Yep.
And that deck is interesting too, from a like, is this something you want to pick up standpoint, because that is a deck that is still incredibly new. It's definitely has some very, very powerful things going on. I don't know if you remember, I had that like little month-long testing spree with Hardened Scales, kind of, I don't know, I want to say 5 months ago, something like that. And that deck was very impressive to me. And I was playing a bad version of it, honestly. I didn't have a lot of the tech people have found since then, and there's still a lot of exploration to be done in the list. I think it's powerful. There's stuff going on, but there are some parts of it that just don't feel good to me, and I think that's just because of the newness of the deck and the still unrefined aspect of it. So I think that's a good deck to pick up, because it is going to, you know, have some growing to do in the future and become a better, more tuned list as, you know, as the months wear on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with Hardened Scales is being able to understand when you have already won. The mistake that I see people make with that deck so often is they already won. They won 2 turns ago, and they're just like still playing.
Yep, they just didn't know they had lethal.
And they're just like, and then you're like, your opponent is at 15. You could put 15 counters on this Walking Ballista right now. And they're like, oh, right. Put 15 counters on this, kill you. So, like, that's the curve, the learning curve of that deck is, are you already dead? And the answer is almost always yes. Because that deck is nuts. Now, granted, if you're in a Stony Silence world, Tuffy McTufferson. Asterisk, you can still just play like a Walking Ballista for 7 and have a 7/7, and that will still get the job done a non-zero amount of the time.
Yeah. I mean, Walking Ballista's kind of messed up in that deck.
Yeah. It's...
Well, the other thing, too, that's really nice about the deck is it gets to play Ancient Stirrings, so that card...
Well, we all know.
We know about that card, right?
We know about that card. So what are you playing for the Invitational?
Well, before we get there, I wanted to touch on one more archetype, I guess, that is starting to break out, that I think is very poorly positioned, but has some serious potential happening. So that is all these Arclight Phoenix decks we're seeing. And Arclight Phoenix, despite being in a terrible metagame for Arclight Phoenix, a.k.a., you know, a graveyard-based deck that is getting hosed by all the hate people are playing for Dredge, it's still putting up results because the deck has this not just, you know, completely graveyard-reliant plan, where it's like, well, you can win with your other plan, and then you have the Arclight Phoenix to kind of hose people who don't have the graveyard hate, right? But also, Arclight Phoenix is like... It's not good when you're not using it out of the graveyard, but it's not embarrassing. Where, like, you know, hardcasting a Narcomoeba or like hardcasting a Stinkweed is pretty embarrassing. Like a 4-mana 3/2 flying haste is not good, but at the same time, like, people play Madness Rider in this format, so it's like kind of acceptable. And
yeah, I mean,
like when your opponent went down a card to like play graveyard hate, then all of a sudden, you know, the card looks better. So. I think Arclight strategies are really going to, you know, start picking up. There's like a Thing in the Ice Arclight deck that's starting to see play, and I think that is also an interesting list to get into now, because that feels very unrefined. It feels like there's a lot of people playing bad cards to make good cards better going on, which again, a strategy we wouldn't recommend. But I think that it has potential for sure, and as the list becomes more tuned over time, it's going to become better and better. So I think, you know, you're by getting to that deck now, you're kind of setting yourself up to have this higher ceiling, I guess.
Yeah, I really like the Arclight the Arclight Phoenix decks. Not necessarily. I don't know. The hate isn't that bad. Like in the Runaway Steamkin deck, where like you can literally just getting the Arclight Phoenixes back for free is like gravy. It's not even necessarily your main plan. It's just like something nice that happens by playing the cards you'd be playing anyways. You like I said, you care, but you really don't care. And then post board, you can either be a burn deck against like the slow decks, or a control deck against like the aggressive decks, because you have so much burn available, and like your creatures are very durable, and you just get like all these mana cheats through Runaway Steamkin, rituals. I don't think that I don't think it's as bad as you think. I think you'd be very surprised. Like, my friend Lexi, I can't pronounce her last name. She's the resident bug mid-range specialist. Currently playing, Runaway Red. She plays at my LGS. She won an IQ this past weekend, not at my LGS, playing the Runaway Red deck that my friend Jake top-8'd the Classic in Charlotte with. If that the whole like line of people makes sense. But it's an extremely versatile deck, and it is also still probably not that deck's final form. I think you're definitely right on that.
Well, that's what I was saying about it, was that like, yeah, like it uses the graveyard, and when you hose the graveyard against that deck, it definitely affects the deck, but it has other things going on where it's not just like wholly reliant on the graveyard. So it's like, you know, whereas Dredge, if you get a Rest in Peace down against Dredge and Dredge doesn't remove it, Dredge is very unlikely to win that game. I mean, they're like, you know, 2 mana 1/1, 3 mana 3/3 that they may or may not be able to cast. Beat down plan is pretty anemic. Whereas like this deck uses the graveyard and definitely, you know, is affected by graveyard hate, but like is not crippled by any means, right?
Right, and it's that's like you would prefer to have it available. Like you would prefer to like Faithless Looting and dump 2 Arclight Phoenixes and then like ritual into a bunch of nonsense and just like have 6 power in the air. But you don't need to do that to win. Like you can still just Faithless Looting, discard 2 Fiery Tempers, and like 6 you. Like draw 2 cards, 6 to your face for 3 mana is pretty good.
Yeah, that's a real card.
That's a card I would play.
I think most people would.
You know, and even the, obviously like that's the best case scenario, but like the medium case is still really good.
Sure.
So I don't know. I'm a believer in the Arclight Phoenix deck.
Well, that's just like, that card is so new, and it's just like opening up so many avenues to play now, where, you know, it almost felt like before, where if you wanted to be, you know, sort of like an abusive graveyard recursion deck, you had to be using Bloodghast in some way, right? Where it was like you're kind of trying to abuse Bloodghast somehow, because that was just like the preeminent like return from the graveyard threat, I guess. And then that kind of leads to like a, you know, prized amalgam, and then, you know, you just get Dredge, right? And there are other ways to use it.
Because otherwise you end up with like, like kind of this dopey like Grave Crawler, Vengevine decks that were around for a little while.
And those are like a way to play, but it's just like, you know, Bloodghast kind of leads to all the same decks, and it's like the decks we're already seeing, right? And Arclight just opened up these like spell-based graveyard decks that we weren't seeing at all. So there's a ton of iterating to do. There's a ton of, you know, advancement in the list possible. So definitely gonna have to keep an eye on that going forward. That just the amount of like cards it made playable that weren't playable before, just, you know, something to keep an eye on for sure.
Single-handedly made Fiery Temper a real card, and it is forever grateful. We forever have my my appreciation because I love Fiery Temper.
That's fair. It's a sweet card.
It's a great card. It's a lightning bolt.
It is lightning bolt. That's a really good card. I like me some lightning bolts.
So there you go. Why play 4 lightning bolts when you can play 8, and you never have to play burst lightning ever?
Oh, but burst lightning's so good.
No, it's
I
not.
love burst lightning.
I know. All right. So now that we've talked about the Arclight Phoenix's deck, which, by the way, is spoiler alert. Like I would probably play like either Runaway Red or some kind of Death Shadow if I was going to the Invitational.
Sure. Both seem like fine choices right now at the moment to me.
Like just it's Stubborn Denial. I'm really into Stubborn Denial in a world of like being able to like Stubborn Denial. Your Faithless Looting on the draw is pretty good.
Yeah.
Or on the play.
Yeah.
rather.
I mean that's a good place to be. Stubborn Denial and Cathartic Reunion also not terrible.
Yeah.
I will say we didn't hit on Death Shadow at all, but I think Death Shadow is very well positioned. We might save that for the next episode because that's a whole topic.
Yeah, that's
in
a
of
topic.
itself. But I do think Death Shadow is very positioned. So if you are a Death Shadow player, you're listening and you kind of not feeling the love this episode, I apologize. We might have something coming up for that. And also I'll put Jund in that category and Green Black. Those are decks that are definitely playable. We didn't hit on. They're not really doing anything different than they normally do. They don't really care about the metagame super much, and they are viable decks, but we just didn't touch them here. So, for me,
most of the action for all those decks happens on the sideboard. Yeah. So
yep,
you're not changing the 75. You're not changing the 60.
You're still a Thoughtseize Tarmogoyf Bob deck generally in those decks, or Death Shadow, your Thoughtseize Death Shadow, whatever other decks you want to play or cards you want to play with that Street Wraith deck, whatever. So for me, my invitational prep is going to start with Blue Moon. And we touched on it earlier with talking about the Rest in Peace Blue-White decks. And I tried that deck, and I think the deck is viable. I think it's a deck you can certainly play. But I don't like crippling your own strategy to try and beat a deck that you may not even play in the format, right? Where it's like you can't not respect Dredge in this format because it's so good and it's so prevalent, like format wise, that you have to respect it. But at the same time, like it's never going to be more than 20% of the field in Modern. It's just is, and it's probably not going to be 20%. But like it's definitely not going to be more than that. That's just how Modern is, right?
Yeah, it would be a fluke if it was more than 10%. I would say. Of like a particular version.
And I agree with you. And so then like you're not even like you're like a favorite to play it like once in a tournament, but like you still need to respect it because it's so dominant. So it felt weird to me to play these Rest in Peace decks. And like Rest in Peace has applications in other matchups, so I'm not hating on it 100%. Like I don't think the card is a do nothing, but there are matchups where it just doesn't do anything. Like you play against Tron or you play against Humans or Bant Spirits, and this card has almost no applications whatsoever. And it's like, yeah, you might find like the corner case, you threw out the thing that makes spirits, like Moreland Haunt, or like against Tron, like you might tag a World Breaker that you got to counter or whatever, and they can't bring it back. But like these are so narrow that it's not like worth playing the card for them, and I don't like addressing issues that way. So for me, I kind of went back into the tank, and something I was playing before Blue White got really popular was Blue Moon. And that was a deck that had a good Dredge matchup back when Dredge was actually playing like, busted cards where they had their Grave Troll still. And I don't think I was playing it during Gataxian Pro, but there were periods where Dredge was good and Vengevine was good. And during those periods, Blue Moon was very good because Thing in the Ice is great main deck graveyard hate, if you will, to those cards in the sense that it's like a sweeper that is good against the cards that are recursive from the graveyard because it puts them back in your opponent's hand. And those decks aren't really built to cast them from their hand. They have to kind of go through like this turn of setting up, getting them back into the graveyard and then getting them back into play. And by that time, you usually just win with your Thing in the Ice. Like it's just such a quick clock that it just ends the game. Mm-hmm. So Blue Moon has traditionally had a very good matchup against those, but it also has good tools. Like I mentioned earlier, you get to play main deck Anger of the Gods and have it be good in the format. And when it's not good, the deck has tools to kind of use it. It's like, you're playing as Trine. You don't really want your Anger the Gods. Well, it's like, you can still tag it with a Lightning Bolt to get rid of a Worm Coil Engine, or, you have Jason Mind Sculptor in your deck. You can just shuffle it away. There are other things I have looked towards with the deck to kind of address these like play situational cards, which, this is a Blood Moon deck, and Blood Moon is a very situational card. There are matchups where it's just the best thing you can do, and there are matchups where it is just a straight do nothing. And so this is the type of deck that is interested in having a way to turn dead cards into things that do stuff. So I'm looking at addressing those right now, but I think Blue Moon's in a really good spot. So I'm playing like 4 Snapcaster, 4 Thing in the Ice, a bunch of cantrips, a bunch of Lightning Bolts, and Burst Lightnings, playing some Abrades. You have Cryptic Command, some counter spells, and Anger the Gods, and Blood Moon, and the package works out to be pretty strong. And then on top of that, you get some good sideboard cards where you get, I think Ceremonious Rejection is just a good card in Modern at this point, and it's very strong against the decks you would bring it in against. Just having a 1-mana way to counter an Arcbound Ravager against Hardened Scales can be backbreaking. Being able to counter Karn for 1 mana, backbreaking for sure. So, sure. Yeah, it's got a lot of stuff going on. It's got some good sideboard cards. Dispel's just always been a good sideboard card in Modern. There are just decks that are just bad against Dispel. And you got Negate, too, for the big mana decks. Negate's usually pretty good against them, and I think the deck's really well positioned. I'm going to be tuning it. I think it got new tools, like we mentioned before, with Ral Zarek, so I played some games with it. I think Ral Zarek really impressed me in the matchups where you wanted it, so it feels like it got some new tools to add to the tools that are already really good. So we'll see where this goes for me, but right now at the Invitational, I'm looking at playing Blue Moon, and I think I'm going to be tuning it the next couple weeks. I could definitely see this turning into me playing an Arclight Phoenix deck, because I like that card a lot, and I would not hate playing Charter Course in Modern. I could see myself doing that, so we'll see where this goes. But right now I'm interested. Charter Course real good. Yeah, 2-mana draw 2 is underappreciated. I mean, I've seen people play Night's Whisper in Vintage. Obviously, this is a different scenario, but at the same time, like 2 mana to draw 2 cards is a good rate.
Yes, strong agree. I'm trying to think. Does strategic planning have any upside?
Not in Blue Moon. It could in Arclight Phoenix decks though.
That's another card that I think is underappreciated.
I mean, strategic planning in your Arclight Phoenix, Thing in the Ice, Bedlam Reveler deck is interesting.
Interesting. Man, you remember that card used to be $1 million?
Well, yeah, it used to only be printed in Portal. Now it's pennies.
All right, so I'll investigate that. I do want to have a quick side note. I actually did download Arena and played it a little bit, and it is very good. It's good. The free to play thing is kind of like jarring for somebody that's used to playing Magic Online, where I'm like, if I just want I want to just buy the cards that I want to play with. But it was fun. It was just a very like sort of casual. Like if I was gonna play Standard a lot, I would probably play it on Arena if I had some way of getting the cards. Like that's the weird thing. The long story short is I made a Goblin deck. It's dope, and I'm playing it in Arena and Standard, and also on Magic Online occasionally, just to like have a little bit of a little bit of Goblins back in my life.
Sure.
People should play Goblin Warchief and Legion Warboss. Like I'm now the takeaway, the modern takeaway is I'm a Legion Warboss believer now.
Legion Warboss is better than it looks.
Like I couldn't believe.
Like it's no Ravelmaster. I still think Ravelmaster is better, but Legion Warboss is good.
I don't know, man. There's potential there that I didn't appreciate until I really got like to play with it. And just like Mentor has such upside in those Goblin decks where you have a lot of 1/1s. I mean, Mentor your Warren Instigator is a strong feeling. It's a very solid plan.
Look, man, I registered Legion Warboss at the Grand Prix last weekend. I'm a fan of the card. I'm just telling you. I still think Ravelmaster is a little better.
Okay. The other card that really surprised me, like really, really surprised me, was Goblin Banneret.
That card's powerful.
Because like to look at it. So Goblin Banneret is one of the it's from guilds. It's 1 mana 1/1 for Goblin Soldier with Mentor, and it basically has like a 2 mana fire breathing. So you can pay 1 on a red. Goblin Banneret gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Like, just being able to randomly make this guy 3 power, like, it turns on the Mentor for other stuff, and that's like its sort of purpose. But also just having this as like a Foundry Street denizen that you can just turn on without playing creatures is a thing. And the Mentor is just, it hasn't happened yet, but, and we talked about this in previous episodes, like it is a mechanic that is powerful enough for Modern that just like nobody's built a deck for it yet, but I guarantee that it is out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a spot for it. I don't know how actually competitive is it against some of the, like, the very degenerate things happening in Modern right now, but there are powerful Mentor cards. Like, I think Taji could see, you know, we talked about that as a card that could see Modern play, so we'll see where that goes, I guess. But yeah, on your point with Arena, I think Arena's amazing right now. I'm very happy with the progress that they've put in that program. You know, obviously to us, you know, as a Modern-focused podcast, it's not as relevant because there's no Modern on it. So that is tough from our perspective, but, you know, just the program itself bringing more people into Magic in general, you know, is just awesome for the game. So hopefully, you know, it keeps going, keeps being very popular, and hopefully, you know, it gets more people to play Modern, because that's what all Modern players want, right, is more people to play against. So that would be awesome.
Yeah, so it is definitely worth like it's definitely worth playing, and if you don't want to put any money into it, you don't have to put any money into it, and it is plenty of fun. It's a nice palate cleanser, you know, every once in a while, because I was just like, I just want to play some Merfolk or whatever. Build towards a, you know, XYZ like fun deck. It is very much that. So don't discount it. And like I said, the client is really good.
Yep.
It's just like, it's so smooth. That's that. Did you have anything else? Any other parting shots before we get to the spiel, get to the spice rack, and then go to bed?
Nope. Nothing. Well, I do just want to say thank you one more time to all the people that, you know, supported me during the last month and, you know, helped encourage me during the journey. There's a lot of listeners that, you know, reached out to me on Twitter, reached out to me in the Discord, and seriously, it meant the world, you guys. It was really awesome. So thank you guys. Yeah, that's all I got.
Sweet. All right, so before we get to the spice rack, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at @1Thoughtseize. Zach is at A22EN. You can watch a stream at twitch.tv/T1Thoughtseize, sponsored by our friends at Card Hoarder. You can see our YouTube videos, youtube.com/turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can read my columns at blog.cardkingdom.com. You can read Zach's Pro Tour recap at coolstuffinc.com. You can become a member of the Thoughtseize Cabal at patreon.com/turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. And, of course, you can see all of our content on turn1Thoughtseize.com. The Spice Rack this week, speaking of Phoenix decks, Blue Moon, etc., is Is It Viceroy, the card that Zach bought pack foils of before realizing that the Mythic Edition was only $40.
Oh, come on, man. It's a low blow. That hurts. No, I am a huge fan of Rael. As we saw in Modern, Teferi is kind of setting the bar for what is playable for a Modern Planeswalker. And let me say right away that Rael is not Teferi. Teferi is definitely better than Rael. That said, decks like Blue Moon and Is It Arclight cannot play Teferi. It's hard to cast a white spell when you don't have white mana in your deck, or white lands that produce white mana, whatever. And I think Ral is a very interesting card, that serves specific purposes, whereas like blue-red decks historically have had a lot of trouble with big creatures because all of your removal tends to be, like lightning bolts or anger the gods or braids, just like these removal spells that don't hit Tarmogoyf, essentially, and you just have always been pretty soft to that card. And this as a card that, can answer the big creatures in those decks is interesting, but it's also just like I win the game value engine threat all by itself, which, the deck can be lacking against, other control decks or other, removal-based decks. So I think it's just an interesting card. I don't know if it's 100% modern playable yet. It's definitely a good sideboard card for certain matchups. Like, it's just an awesome card to play against Jund because they have a hard time removing it. And it's got high loyalty, so it's hard to attack and kill if you are, also pairing it with like lightning bolts and cheap red removal. So I think it's a very powerful card. I don't think we actually read it, so I'm going to do that. It's 3 blue-red for a Ral Izzet Viceroy, Legendary Planeswalker Ral. Starts with 5 loyalty and has a +1 that says look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one into your hand, the other into your graveyard. So that's awesome with like an Arclight Phoenix or even like a Bedlam Reveler to make it cost less. It has -3. It says deal damage to target creature equal to the number of instants and sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. So the exile clause is super relevant with Dredge here right now, where it's like you can bin all these exile or all these instants and sorceries, get them in your graveyard, get Ral ready to go. They can kind of play the rest in peace they might have in the main deck in their blue-white control deck, and have Ral still kill a creature if that's relevant. Or like against Tron, you can kill a World Breaker with it, and they might have been relicking you, and that's fine because it still works. And then the -8 on it wins the game. It's just an emblem. This is whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, you deal 4 damage to any target and you draw 2 cards, which you're gonna have a hard time losing with that emblem in play. I'm sure you could find a situation where that would happen, but I imagine you'll win the vast majority of the games you have that. And it starts at 5 and immediately goes to 6, so getting to 8 is not super hard with this card. So I found it to be a very powerful Planeswalker, and I think it's just the best option you have at 5 mana in blue-red, where it's like that spot has been kind of held by a lot of bad stuff before. I mean, you have like Keranos, which is not very good. You've got like there's a 5 mana Tezzeret I tried. I played like Batterskull. There's just a lot of bad stuff at the 5 mana spot that blue and red have tried to play, and none of it's been very good. So I think this is just the best option in that slot, and I'm excited to see exactly how good it is.
You know what that ultimate would be really good with?
What?
Niv Mizzet.
I guess that's true, yeah. If you have a Ral emblem and a Niv Mizzet in play, though, I imagine you're winning handily.
One hopes. Or you're just like in the middle of the grindiest blue-red like mirror match.
Well, it's ever. Like, did you need to draw 3 cards and deal 5 damage instead of drawing 2 and dealing 4? No, because it deals even more damage. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. That is a combo.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, hey, look, you do it.
Well, I would do it. I'd be very excited to make this happen.
There you go. All right, well, get on it and let me know how it goes.
I will.
Excellent. All right, that, as they say, is that. We should be getting back to a much more normal schedule now. As the sort of PT post PT is settling in. So
well, there's also the promise of a modern PT coming up, and if that happens, we might go nuts.
Yes, well, that I think is bound to happen. I want to see they like either completely confirmed it or just like
nope, they've confirmed nothing. There is no confirmation of what the next format is. However, historically, the PT has almost always been the same format as the RPTQ you qualified playing it. So the RPTQ is modern. We'll see what happens.
There you go. So tune in next time for what's going to get banned before the Pro Tour.
No bans. Well, except Creeping Chill. That card can go. This card has no fair applications whatsoever.
That is correct. Yes, it is either the worst Lightning Helix ever or the best Lightning Helix ever.
Correct. Yep.
There's no in betweens. All right. Well, thank you everybody for one, for listening, two, for sticking with us while we sort of got our like two month train of like Pro Tour lead up, Pro Tour, post Pro Tour, like kind of get everything back to normal until the next one. Because you know what? There's always a next one.
I love you guys.
All right. Talk to you then.